Hello everyone, welcome to the Pocket-Sized Tales YouTube channel. My name's Edward, and I'll be narrating today's story. If you're new here, we write and narrate our own stories. Please purchase a t-shirt from the Pocket Shop or leave a super thanks if you'd like to support the channel. Other than that, please like, comment, subscribe, and share the content with your friends and family. Also, hit that bell notification so you'll be alerted when a new story is uploaded. Thanks everyone. Now on to the story. Curse of the Witch. Amanda sat hunched over her cluttered dining table, the harsh glare of the overhead light casting a cold, sterile pallor on her surroundings. Her long, raven-black hair cascaded like a silken curtain around her as she stared intently at her homework. Meanwhile, in the small kitchen of their cramped apartment, the fragrant aroma of May's traditional pork and greens soup filled the air. The soup bubbled and hissed in a battered pot on the stove, an heirloom passed down from Amanda's grandmother. May ladled the steaming broth into a chipped bowl and brought it to the table. Her expression radiated love and devotion as she placed the bowl before her daughter. "For my special girl," May whispered, her voice soft and soothing. Amanda smiled. Her mother had a way of making even the simplest moments feel magical, and their shared meal was no exception. The soup was a testament to their heritage, the comforting flavors of home that kept them anchored in a world that often felt unkind. As they savored their dinner, the apartment complex outside buzzed with life, voices and laughter of neighbors intermingling with the occasional distant sound of traffic. May and Amanda were a world unto themselves, cocooned in the warm embrace of their connection. However, their sanctuary was far from impenetrable. A harsh, judgmental voice, like an ominous thunderclap, echoed from the open window, shattering their tranquility. Mrs. Chang, their nosy next-door neighbor, stood in the courtyard with a group of her friends like a flock of hens, their malicious words seeping into the apartment like venom. "I heard she doesn't even know who the father is," Mrs. Chang sneered, her lips curling with vindictive pleasure. Amanda's heart plummeted, and she exchanged a pained glance with her mother. It was a hurtful reminder of the stigma that plagued them. Their neighbors often made it clear that they looked down upon the duo because they didn't fit the traditional mold of a nuclear family. May, her eyes a blend of sadness and determination, placed a reassuring hand on Amanda's shoulder, a silent promise of unwavering support. "Amanda, don't pay attention to what others say. We can't control their words or their judgments. What matters is that we know who we are." Amanda nodded, her spirit fortified by her mother's strength. They may have faced the scorn of their neighbors, but they stood together, unbroken, a duo as unique and enduring as their connection. The chorus of judgment outside grew fainter as May and Amanda focused on their meal. The soup, rich and flavorful, was a testament to May's love and dedication, a soothing balm that calmed the turmoil in their hearts. Despite the temporary respite, the specter of torment loomed, casting its long shadow over Amanda's life. The bullies at her school, led by the malicious Kai, tormented her incessantly. Kai was a manipulative and ruthless leader. He was of average height, but exuded a malevolence that far exceeded his physical stature, commanding a gang of misfits who eagerly followed his lead. Unfortunately, they all resided in the same apartment complex as well. As days turned into weeks, the torment at school began to seep into Amanda's daily life. The bullying, both at school and within their apartment complex, drove her to become a recluse, a prisoner in her own home, and she wasn't alone. Kai's gang also targeted other defenseless kids, most notably Sean. Sean, a partially deaf boy with an endearing, bashful smile, was a close friend to Amanda. He was bigger in stature than most students in his class, but he was a gentle giant due to his soft nature. Their bond was forged in the crucible of shared torment, an unspoken understanding that united them against the bullies. One sweltering afternoon, while Amanda sat at her bedroom window, the heavy curtains drawn back just enough to observe the open courtyard below, she watched in mute horror as Sean fell victim to the gang's cruel pranks. Kai signaled to his gang, and one of them stalked silently toward Sean, who remained blissfully unaware of his presence as the rest of the gang looked on in anticipated delight. Amanda clenched her fists, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. The girl wanted to yell out and warn her friend, but she couldn't do it for fear of the gang's retaliation. Like a cat, the goon slowly and carefully crept toward his victim from behind until he was close enough to pounce. Then, with malice intent, he screamed into Sean's ear. The sound permeated the stillness of the courtyard. The unsuspecting boy lurched forward, his body trembling with fear, his eyes wide and uncomprehending as terror gripped him. The gangsters howled in wicked laughter, taking perverse pleasure in their merciless torment. Amanda watched helplessly from her window, her heart aching for her friend. Sean's vulnerability was a mirror image of her own, a cruel reminder of their shared experiences. That afternoon, the boy had gotten off easy because the thugs were capable of much worse. Some days Amanda saw him come home from school bloodied and without his shoes. She couldn't wrap her mind around how people were capable of being so cruel, each family sharing a similar fate, misplaced from their home in a faraway land. Everyone in the apartment complex was poor and desperate, just going about their daily business to survive. We don't need unnecessary problems, she thought. As she pondered about the struggles of her people and those taking advantage of their unfortunate circumstances, Amanda became overwhelmed with an uncontrollable tide of emotions. Without being aware of it, she began staring unblinkingly at the little ceramic vase housing her white lily on the windowsill. Her brows furrowed and nostrils flared as her breathing and pulse quickened from the unpleasant memories. Before she knew it, Amanda was drinking from the polluted fountain of her darkest thoughts, fueled by the pent-up rage bubbling from deep within her soul. Amanda aimed her dark, energy-filled attention intensely on a single point of the vase. The irises of her eyes went from brown to red and began glowing. The vase vibrated rapidly, walking itself to the edge of the windowsill toward her until it fell off. The vase shattered with a crack before hitting the linoleum floor, waking Amanda from her daydream. Startled, she stared at the broken mess before her, the glowing reds of her eyes now normal again, wondering how her vase had fallen from the windowsill. A second later, her bedroom door opened and May poked her head inside. "Everything okay, Amanda?" her mother asked. "Yes, Mom. Just had a little accident is all," Amanda said, crouching over by the window, picking up the broken pieces of the vase with her hand. "I'll grab a broom, dear," May said. As if the horrors of the day were not bad enough, Amanda started being plagued by haunting nightmares. They were vivid and grotesque visions. In these dreams, the bullies who tormented her and her friends met gruesome and violent ends, their bodies mangled and broken. The girl would wake up in a cold sweat, her heart racing, and the suffocating weight of guilt pressing down upon her. The dreams left Amanda in a state of perpetual unease. The days blurred into one another, and Amanda's anxiety continued to mount as her frightful visions became a reality. Since the dreams started, 2 members of Kai's gang have died in a series of unexplainable events. In each case, the deceased ended up taking their own lives either by leaping off a building or walking into traffic. This drew the police into an investigation. Amanda felt helpless. Despite being able to see into the future, she couldn't prevent the tragedies. Even if they had wronged her and her friends, no one deserved to die in such a manner. One crisp autumn morning, as the sun bathed the apartment complex in a gentle golden light, Kai and his gang gathered at their usual haunt, whispering amongst themselves as they sought to decipher the inexplicable chain of events. They were no longer the relentless tormentors they once were. Fear seemed to have transformed them into wary shadows, and the specter of death hung over them like a dark rain cloud, following them wherever they went. Kai narrowed his eyes, leaning closer to his gang members. "We need answers," he muttered, his voice tense and cold. "Someone's pulling the strings, and it sure as hell isn't us." The gang exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of guilt and paranoia pressing down upon them. The knowledge they brought about their own affliction was a truth they couldn't escape. One of the gang members, with his eyes darting about as if expecting to be watched, spoke up. "I heard people talking about that beggar." Kai's eyebrows arched with intrigue. "What's that beggar woman got to do with any of this?" The gang member shifted uncomfortably, his voice barely above a whisper. "They say she's a witch, a curse-bringer. The story goes, she was the sole survivor of a massacre. Supposedly, she survived by sacrificing the souls of her entire village to a demon she worshipped in order to live. Maybe she's behind it." Kai's icy gaze flicked toward the gangster, a dangerous glint in his eyes. "A witch, you say? Well then, it's high time we pay her a little visit. If anything, we'd be doing everyone a favor." As the apartment complex awoke to another day, a collective unease gripped the residents. Miss View's apartment had been turned into a crime scene, the police tape a stark reminder of the horrors that unfolded within the night before. Drawn by a sense of foreboding, Amanda approached the gathering crowd with May by her side. Amanda's heart ached as she watched Miss View being taken away, guilt clawing at her chest. The elderly woman had on an oxygen mask and appeared to be unconscious as she was being carted into an ambulance. The atmosphere was heavy with dread, and the neighbors exchanged whispered theories about what transpired within the woman's home. Though the old woman had done nothing to deserve what happened, the community barely tolerated her when she came begging for money, flailing her arms and fingers around in a poor attempt at sign language. Even the children hid behind their parents. Like Amanda and May, Miss View was an outcast, and people around the apartment often spread misinformation and gossip about her despite not knowing who she was. Miss View was one of few friends to May and Amanda, and they to her. That night, as Amanda lay in bed, her mind swirled with a maelstrom of confusion and fear. She couldn't reconcile her nightmares with the reality that had unfolded. Miss View's suffering weighed heavily on her heart. If I truly possessed the ability to see into the future, how come I wasn't able to foresee what happened with Miss View? Had I known what was going to happen, I would have stopped it, she thought. She reached out to touch the photo of her mother on the bedside table, a gesture of solace and reassurance. May had always been her pillar of strength, a beacon of unwavering love and support. But as the darkness closed in around her, Amanda's faith in her own power wavered. She couldn't help but suspect Kai and his gang were responsible for the break-in and turned their evil to another helpless victim. It was a suspicion born of the cruel patterns she had witnessed. Unless something gets done, things will continue in a downward spiral, resulting in more victims. I have to make things right, the girl thought. Amanda decided she would go to the police, share her suspicions, and hope the gang could be brought to justice. As the police delved deeper into the break-in at Miss View's apartment, the tension in the community thickened. After finding no proof or evidence leading to the gang, the police let them go. They soon went into hiding, concealing their presence as the goons sought to avoid further scrutiny. Despite the police not arresting the gangsters, Amanda didn't regret reporting them as some good did come out of it. For a time there was actually peace and quiet. Amanda and Sean made their way to the dimly lit courtyard one chilly evening, their footsteps echoing in the silence. As they walked along the cracked pavement, a soft mewling caught their attention. In the shadows, a small black male kitten emerged, its plaintive cries filling the air. Amanda's heart touched by the sight of the abandoned kitten, crouched down to offer it a gentle touch. The fragile creature's fur was matted and dirty, its emerald eyes filled with a mix of fear and longing. Sean's face, illuminated by a tentative smile, said, "Poor thing needs a home, just like we do." Amanda nodded in agreement, her heart aching for the small creature that had crossed their path. At that moment, they made a silent pact to provide the kitten with the love and care it so desperately needed. However, the duo wasn't alone. Kai was quietly watching them from the dark balcony of his apartment. The light from his cigarette lit up like a lone star in the night sky as he took a nice long drag from it. He exhaled 2 streams of smoke from his nostrils, relishing in an opportunity to exploit their vulnerability, to satiate his sadistic desires. It had been far too long. The following days were filled with tentative moments of bonding as the kitten became an unexpected source of comfort and joy for Amanda and Sean. They even gave him the name Comet. They nurtured the fragile creature, taking turns feeding it and playing with it at their new hideout. It was an old tiny office in an abandoned car dealership not too far from where they lived. They made sure to be discreet with their new friend, knowing what would happen if Kai and his goons found out. When Amanda was younger, she saw firsthand the horrible things Kai did to a pair of baby birds that fell from a nest. She didn't want to imagine what it would be like for other animals to have the misfortune of encountering that psychopath. The safest thing to do, they thought, was to put Comet elsewhere, since neither of their parents would let them keep the kitten. On a dark and gloomy day after school, Amanda and Sean sat around their hideout with the kitten nestled between them, bathed in the warm orange glow of candlelight. They had just finished feeding Comet and were letting him play and run around. Their peace and quiet didn't last long before they were surprised by Kai's gang. The teen had been stalking them ever since he saw them on the night they found the kitten. Amanda grabbed Comet and they tried to escape, but it was too late. The 6 gang members had them surrounded. "You guys missed me?" Kai asked, his voice dripping with condescension. "Well, it seems you've made a new friend." As if on cue, thunder clapped and lightning flashed from the window behind the gang leader. Amanda clenched her fists tightly, her heart pounding with a mix of dread and anger. She had grown weary of Kai's torment, and the kitten was an innocent life she couldn't bear to see harmed. "We won't let you hurt Comet!" Sean shouted. The tone sounded almost unnatural, since the boy was so scared, and Kai smiled in amusement at that. He had waited for this moment, the chance to remind them he was still in control despite some minor setbacks. The time was finally right to feast on the fears and sufferings of his victims once again. "And you even gave it a name," Kai sneered. The circle closed in around Sean and Amanda as the gang stepped forward. Sean felt he had to do something. At the very least, he could try to help Amanda and Comet escape. Mustering every ounce of courage within himself, Sean roared, and Bull rushed the closest goon, catching him by surprise and driving him to the floor. The others swarmed the bigger boy, raining blows and stomping on him. From behind, one of the gangsters grabbed Amanda. She resisted as best she could, but was easily subdued. Another one snatched the kitten from her and handed it to Kai. Sean was left immobilized and bloody after the beating he received. "Sean!" Amanda cried, but he didn't respond. "Now we can move on to the main event," Kai said. "Kai, stop this. I'll do anything you want," Amanda pleaded. The gang leader ignored her and continued with his demented act. "We're gonna make Comet here do a little dance," he said with a sinister grin on his face as he caressed the tiny feline. The sadistic teen dropped Comet into a canvas bag that reeked of gasoline being held by another gang member. Amanda's voice wavered with desperation, and tears streamed down her cheeks. "Kai, don't! He's just a kitten!" The goon secured the bag with a rope. Time slowed, and Amanda, still restrained by her guard, let out an inaudible scream as the bag became ablaze. Comet's agonizing cries echoed throughout the old office building as the flames quickly spread throughout the bag. Amanda and Sean's faces contorted with horror as they watched helplessly in despair. The grotesque spectacle of the fiery bag hopped and danced to the tune of the gang's sick and twisted laughter until it finally became still. Outside, lightning slashed like a divine dagger through darkness, exposing the old car dealership below, and thunder roared with the ferocity of a monstrous beast, shaking the foundation of the tiny building. Then the clouds finally let loose their tears like a cascade of sorrows falling in torrents. The wind wailed as it swept through the empty parking lot, conducting a mournful symphony with the relentless drumming of rain upon the building. At that moment, the storm reached the crescendo of its lament. Amanda became blinded with rage, her eyes glowing like an intense ember. The flames from the candles intensified. With a swoosh, the flames from them shot upward like geysers. The arms of the boy holding her snapped with a sickening crunch, blood pouring from his forearms and bones protruding through the ragged openings. He screamed in pain, letting go of the girl at once. All laughter ceased immediately as the other boys whipped around to see their friend writhing on the floor in pain. Before anyone could react, they were whisked into the air, each of them shocked and struggling helplessly as they slipped further from the ground beneath them, their feet dangling in midair. Amanda, her eyes still blazing, made her way toward Kai. The gangsters tried to scream, but their voices were cut down to pathetic whimpers as their vocal cords and windpipes were crushed along with the rest of their bodies and scrunched tightly into a ball. Sean was barely getting to his feet when the grisly scene unfolded before him. What he saw frightened him to the core. His kind, compassionate friend was almost unrecognizable. He tried calling out to Amanda, telling her to stop, but she didn't respond. Not even once did she acknowledge his presence. Sean scrambled out of the way when all at once the balled-up corpses dropped carelessly around him. The only one remaining was Kai, still suspended in the air. He tried desperately to cry and beg for mercy, but only a whisper escaped his lips. Amanda willed the boy's mouth open with his tongue out, then forced his teeth down on it like a guillotine. A muffled scream erupted from his bloody mouth, and tears rolled down his eyes as his teeth began sawing off the rest of the remaining flesh still attached to the dangling tongue on his lips. Back and forth, they went until the tongue finally plopped to the dirty floor. Blood spilled from the wound and onto the face of the girl below him as he convulsed violently in pain. However, Amanda was far from finished. She reveled in the torment she had unleashed upon her bully. With a sadistic fervor, she began twisting and bending each of Kai's joints inch by painful inch. Kai's muffled cries of pain went unanswered as Amanda continued her ruthless assault, the twisted contortions of his body a testament to her newfound power. As the torment reached its horrifying climax, Amanda ended Kai's life with a final, vengeful act. She strangled him with her telekinetic powers where he hung suspended in the air, her grip tightening, until his life slowly seeped from his body and his bloodshot eyes bulged from their sockets. After she sensed he was dead, Amanda released her hold on him. Kai's lifeless body crashed to the floor with a loud thud. Exhausted from her supernatural feat, the red glow from Amanda's eyes faded away, and she blacked out, collapsing onto the floor at the center of the ring of corpses. Amanda jolted awake, finding herself back in her bedroom, confused how she ended up there. Had everything she saw been a dream? There was an open suitcase at the foot of the bed filled with her and Mother's clothes. May's back was to her as she rummaged through their dresser. "Mom, what's going on?" Amanda asked. May turned around, cradling a pile of clothes with both arms, her face etched with concern. "Amanda, you're awake," her mother said in surprise as she stuffed their suitcase haphazardly. The last thing she remembered was Kai's gang showing up unannounced at the hideout. Everything else after that seemed like a blur. What happened to Sean and Comet, the girl wondered. May cut in before she could inquire about them. "Are you well enough to walk?" Amanda nodded. "Good. We've got to get out of here as quickly as we can," her mother said. Amanda didn't have a good feeling about what was happening. She'd never seen her mother so flustered. It seemed there was a lot on her mother's mind. But Amanda had questions that had been gnawing at her for a while. The teen suspected her mother knew the answers to them, given her frantic state and her sudden desire to leave. Perhaps it was all connected to the horrifying dreams she'd been having. At least she hoped that was all they were, but deep down she knew they were much more, and that terrified her. "We need to talk about what's going on," said Amanda. "Not now, dear," May said, shutting the lid on the suitcase and securing it with a click. "Get dressed. We're leaving soon." Amanda, no longer able to contain herself, shouted, "Now!" A gust of wind blew through the room, knocking over various decorations, picture frames, and throwing paper into the air. Startled, May stopped in her tracks. With her pulse racing, the old woman closed her eyes momentarily and took a deep breath as she tried to compose herself. With both arms up and lowering them slowly, palms open in a non-threatening gesture, May said in the calmest manner possible, Okay, let's talk about it."